Bum 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 bum.
Tomatoes?
Hello, welcome to video 4. What is Draw Debug Box? The Draw Debug Box is a useful node to give us a debug box, or something that looks like a box, basically using debug lines inside of our world. Now what we see here is a box collision. This is not a debug box. This is actually just a box collision component, and it's going to show the size of the box for debugging purposes. But if you were to run it, the box by default disappears. Okay, not a problem. We could always go into our debug box and we could grab the hidden in game and uncheck it. And now we can actually see our debug in the game. But it's a basic 1 thickness box of this color, and it makes it a little bit difficult to see under certain circumstances because of blurring. So we have our debug box. So we go ahead and look in here. Our Draw Debug Box node has a few options. We have our center of our box. In this case, I'm going to grab the debug collision box we're using and put it into the center. We have the extent. The extent is basically the X, Y, and Z directions, how far from the middle it goes from the center. So you could think of it as your half radius. In this case, our collision box has an extent, so we're going to use that for the value. We have a default line color of black. If we wish to rotate it, a duration and a thickness. Now in terms of the duration and thickness, by default they're 0. Let's change that. Let's make it a duration of 10 and a thickness of 1. We'll leave the color black. We'll go and hook this up to our begin play, and we'll run this. Let me go back to our collision box and tell it to hide again in game. And we'll look at this. And this is our debug box. You'll notice it's a little bit easier to see, and it's a little bit better color. Now the nice thing about this is we can of course adjust it. We could make the thickness, for example, 4, and we can make the line color something like a red. So this gives us a little bit more of an apparent debug box. Now it's much easier to see that we have a box there that we're using for collision, for example. The nice thing though is we do have other options. Duration is how long it's going to be inside the world. If we set this to 0, it'll be the frame only. So we can of course hook that up to our tick, and now we will see it every frame drawn. So if this box here was to move, the collision box would move with it now, this debug box. In terms of the other options, we have rotation. This is just simply if we want to rotate and how much we want to rotate. It's useful, of course, obviously, if the item you're trying to mimic or debug is rotated. So in this case, we could do something like 45 on the Y, hit play, and you'll see our box rotated 45 on the Y. Nothing fancy there. If we want to get rid of a box after we've already drawn it in the scene, let's say we're set it to draw for 30, and we're in here, we're like, oh, okay, understood, but I don't want it to be there anymore. We have the flush. If we type in flush, we have the flush persistent debug lines node. Let's set this up on a delay so we can watch it being used. We'll set it to something like 2 seconds, and we'll hit play. After 2 seconds, our box will disappear. The flush node is how you get rid of any debug lines you have in your scene if you have a duration other than 0 and you're not drawing it every tick. So that's it. That's going to be the basics of our draw debug box. Where it's at in terms of its center, how big it is from that center, so the half radius along the X, Y, and Z, whatever color we want to be. If we want a rotation, how long it will persist in the world. 0 is going to be for that frame only, and then how thick we want the line to be.